Imagine you're standing on a city street when a roaring wall comes rushing toward you. It's not water, it's not fire, it's thick, dark, sticky molasses, moving faster than you can run. This unbelievable nightmare became a terrifying reality in Boston on a winter afternoon in 1919, and in just a matter of minutes, it completely destroyed an entire neighborhood. On January 15, 1919, the north end of Boston was having a normal day. It was cold, but strangely warm for a New England winter. Then, around midday, without any warning, a deep, rumbling sound echoed through the streets. Witnesses later described it as sounding like a series of gunshots or a massive explosion. Moments later, a huge steel storage tank burst apart. This wasn't just any tank. It held more than 2 million gallons of crude molasses. As it ruptured, a giant wave nearly 25 feet high surged through the streets at an incredible speed, estimated at 35 miles per hour. The force was so immense that buildings were lifted off their foundations and collapsed. Steel beams from the elevated railway tracks were twisted and torn apart. Horse-drawn wagons were tossed aside like they were toys. People had absolutely no time to react. The molasses poured through the streets like a deadly, viscous flood. It smashed windows, crushed wooden structures, and swept people, horses, and debris along with it. The syrup was so thick and heavy that once someone was knocked down, it was nearly impossible to get back up. As the cold winter air hit the wave, the molasses began to thicken and harden, trapping victims right where they stood or fell. What made this disaster even more horrifying was that those who rushed in to help often became stuck themselves. Firefighters, police officers, and even cadets from a nearby naval training ship raced to the scene. But the rescue efforts were incredibly difficult. Wading through waist-deep molasses was exhausting and dangerous. When firefighters tried to use water hoses to wash it away, it only made the surface even more slippery and treacherous. Panicked horses, trapped in the goo, became a danger to everyone around them. Entire streets were coated in a thick, sticky, brown syrup, and the city was completely unprepared for something so bizarre and destructive. By the time the wave finally settled, at least 21 people had lost their lives, and more than 150 were seriously injured. Many suffered from broken bones, internal injuries, and the long-term psychological trauma of the event. But the destruction didn't end there. For weeks, cleanup crews struggled to remove the molasses. It had seeped into the basements of buildings, soaked into clothing, and clung to every surface it touched. Residents later claimed that for decades after, on hot summer days, the sweet, sickening smell of molasses could still be detected in the area. The harbor was stained brown for months. As the city tried to recover, one crucial question emerged. How could something like this possibly have happened? Investigations soon revealed the shocking truth. The massive storage tank had been poorly constructed and was never properly tested. It had been leaking for years, but instead of fixing the problem, the parent company, United States Industrial Alcohol, simply had it painted brown to hide the dark streaks of leaking molasses. Safety warnings from employees were completely ignored. Profit was put far ahead of human life. What followed became one of the most important legal battles in American history. The company responsible was taken to court in one of the nation's first-ever class action lawsuits. After years of testimony from hundreds of witnesses, the victims won. The ruling became a landmark case for corporate accountability, and it led to major changes in how industrial safety laws and construction regulations were written and enforced all across the United States. Today, if you walk through the streets of Boston's North End, it's a calm and historic neighborhood. There's no sign of the massive tank or the deadly flood that once swept through. A small plaque is all that marks the spot, but history remembers. Because on that day in 1919, Boston learned a terrifying lesson that corporate negligence can be just as deadly as any natural disaster. The Great Molasses Flood remains one of the strangest and most shocking events in American history, not just because it was a bizarre accident, but because it was completely and utterly preventable. And that is what makes this story so unforgettable. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more incredible stories from history. See you next time.